What happens when a beloved superhero known for his calm, thoughtful image walks onto a daytime talk show expecting polite conversation, and instead finds himself pushed into a corner where silence feels like surrender? What happens when Captain America himself decides he's done smiling, done deflecting, and finally pushes back, live on television? Before we go any further, if you love intense celebrity moments, dramatic confrontations, and stories that feel like movies unfolding in real time, make sure you subscribe to the narration show, hit like, and drop a comment telling us what you think as this story unfolds. The studio lights are warm, almost deceptively so. They spill across the polished table, bounce off glossy mugs, and settle on Chris Evans as he takes his seat. The audience applauds instinctively, loudly, the way people do when they see someone they feel they already know. To many in the room, he isn't just an actor. His familiarity, his moral clarity, he's the guy who played goodness so convincingly that it blurred into reality. Chris smiles, waves slightly, that practiced but genuine grin. Inside, though, there's a quiet tension. He's been doing interviews for years. He knows the rhythm. Laugh here. Reflect there. Share something personal but not too personal. He's done this dance hundreds of times. Across from him sits Sunny Hostin, posture straight, eyes focused, expression calm but sharp. She's not smiling in the same way. Sunny is known for her directness, her willingness to press where others might soften the edges. The View is not just a talk show. It's a battleground of opinions disguised as daytime conversation. The opening moments go smoothly. Laughter, a joke about Chris's schedule, a nod to his latest project. The audience relaxes. This is what they came for. But then the tone shifts. Sunny leans in slightly, fingers resting against her mug. Her voice remains measured, almost gentle, but there's something underneath it, intent. Chris, she begins, you've been very vocal about your views lately. Politics, social responsibility, the role of celebrities in shaping public opinion. Chris nods slowly. He's been here before. He answers carefully, speaking about empathy, listening, using one's platform responsibly. The words are thoughtful, safe. The audience hums with approval. Sunny doesn't interrupt. She lets him finish. Then she tilts her head. But don't you think, she says, pausing just long enough for the weight of the question to settle, that sometimes celebrities overstep? That maybe people didn't vote for actors to lecture them? There it is. The air in the studio tightens. Chris's smile fades, not dramatically, but noticeably. His eyes flicker, just for a second, as if something inside him recalibrates. This isn't a casual question. It's a challenge. He answers calmly at first. He talks about citizenship, about speaking as a person, not an authority. His tone remains respectful. But Sunny isn't done. She presses again, this time more pointed. But when fans look up to you, when kids wear your face on their backpacks, don't you think your words carry disproportionate influence? Isn't that dangerous? The word hangs there. Dangerous. A murmur ripples through the audience. Some nod. Others shift uncomfortably. Chris inhales slowly. You can almost see the moment where he decides something. The moment where politeness steps aside. He leans forward. With respect, he says, and his voice is still calm, but firmer now. I think it's more dangerous to suggest that people can't think for themselves. The audience reacts instantly. A few gasps. A smattering of applause quickly hushed by the studio's unspoken rules. Sunny raises her eyebrows. That's not what I said. I know, Chris replies, without missing a beat. But that's the implication. That if I speak, people stop thinking. And I don't believe that about my fans, or about the public. The camera cuts to Sunny. Her expression tightens, just slightly. This is no longer a friendly exchange. This is push and pull. She responds, sharper now. So you don't think there's any responsibility to step back? To stay in your lane? That phrase, stay in your lane, lands differently. Chris exhales through his nose, a restrained sigh. I hear that a lot, he says. And it's usually said to people when what they are saying makes someone uncomfortable. The audience breaks into louder reaction now. Applause. A few cheers. The energy in the room spikes. Sunny straightens. Or, she counters, it's said when people without expertise dominate conversations that affect millions. The tension is visible. Chris's jaw tightens. He's still composed, but the friendliness is gone. This isn't Captain America anymore. This is a man who's been asked to justify his right to speak. I'm not claiming expertise, he says. I'm claiming humanity. I vote. I live here. I care. And silence doesn't feel responsible to me. There's a beat. The kind of silence that feels loud. The other hosts shift in their seats. One glances between them, unsure whether to jump in. The audience is split, half energized, half uneasy. Sunny leans back slightly, arms folding. But when your words divide people, when fans turn on each other online, doesn't that bother you? Chris's eyes soften for a moment. This one hits closer to home. Of course it does, he admits. But division doesn't start with me speaking. It starts when we decide that disagreement equals harm. Another wave of reaction. This time, louder. The director signals for calm. But it's too late. The moment has tipped. Social media is already buzzing. Phones in pockets vibrate silently as clips begin to circulate. Sunny isn't smiling now. So you're saying critics should just accept it? No, Chris says. I'm saying we should all accept that conversation is messy. And that telling people to shut up because they are famous is just another way of avoiding the conversation. The words are clear. Direct. Unapologetic. For the first time, Sunny pauses longer than usual before responding. Her eyes search his face, perhaps for hesitation, perhaps for regret. She doesn't find it. The audience senses it too. This isn't scripted. This isn't playful debate. This is a line being drawn, live, under lights, with millions watching. And somewhere in that moment, fans at home begin to divide. Some cheer Chris's refusal to back down. Others side with Sunny, praising her for holding him accountable. The applause fades. The show moves on, awkwardly, to the next topic. But the energy never fully resets. Something has changed. Chris smiles again before the commercial break, but it's different now. Tighter. More guarded. Sunny thanks him politely, professionalism restored, but the spark remains in the air like static after lightning. No one in that studio knows it yet, but this conversation is about to escape the room. Clips will be slowed down, dissected, debated. Headlines will ask who won. Comment sections will burn. And the real confrontation? It's only just beginning. The red light above the camera flicks off for commercial, but the tension doesn't leave the room. It just changes shape. Chris Evans exhales slowly, shoulders lowering just a fraction, as if he's been holding his breath longer than he realized. Around him, the studio buzzes with low murmurs, producers whispering into headsets, audience members leaning toward each other, eyes still fixed on the man at the table who dared to push back. Sunny Hostin adjusts her notes, her movements precise, controlled. On the surface, everything looks professional. Beneath it, something simmers. Chris feels it. He's been on red carpets where cameras screamed his name. He's sat across from journalists trained to provoke a reaction. But this feels different. This feels personal. Not hostile, yet, but charged, like a conversation that accidentally wandered too close to truth. When the show returns from break, the applause is polite, but uneven. Some clap harder than others. Some don't clap at all. Chris notices. He always notices. Sunny resumes first, her voice calm again, smooth as glass. Chris, I want to be clear, she says, turning slightly toward him. This isn't about silencing anyone. It's about responsibility. The word comes back. Responsibility. Chris nods slowly, but his eyes remain steady. He's listening, but he's also bracing. She continues. You have immense influence. Millions follow you. When you speak, it doesn't land in a vacuum. Chris leans back in his chair, hands clasped loosely. I agree, he says. Influence matters. That's exactly why I don't want to pretend I don't have opinions. Sunny tilts her head. But opinions can hurt. The sentence lands softly, but it lands. Chris feels a flicker of frustration rise, quick and sharp. He pushes it down, choosing his words. So can silence, he replies. So can pretending we're neutral when we're not. A few audience members clap. Others stay still, faces unreadable. One of the other hosts attempts to lighten the mood, tossing in a gentle joke about Chris's Boston accent. Laughter ripples briefly, a release valve. Chris smiles, appreciative, but the core tension doesn't dissolve. Sunny doesn't laugh. She waits. When the laughter fades, she returns to him. Do you ever worry, she asks, that people don't hear nuance? That they only hear the loudest version of what you say? Chris pauses. This question isn't an attack. It's sharper because it's reasonable. Yes, he says finally. All the time. There's honesty there now, rawer than before. The audience leans in. I worry about that when anyone speaks publicly, he continues. Politicians, journalists, hosts on this show, me. But if fear of being misunderstood keeps us quiet, then only the loudest, angriest voices win. Sunny's lips press together. She nods once, slowly, but her eyes stay intense. But when your words energize people who then attack others online. I don't control that. Chris cuts in, not loudly, but firmly. It's the first time he interrupts her. There's an audible intake of breath from the crowd. He catches himself, softens his tone. I can encourage decency. I can speak carefully. But I can't be responsible for every bad faith reaction. Sunny straightens. Public figures are often asked to take responsibility beyond their intent. And they are also often asked to carry blame that doesn't belong to them, Chris replies. The back and forth has a rhythm now. Question. Answer. Push. Push back. At home, viewers are already picking sides. On social media, clips begin to circulate with captions written in all caps. Some praise Chris for standing his ground. Others accuse him of arrogance, of deflection. Sunny's supporters call her brave, articulate, unafraid to challenge power. Chris's fans call the questioning unfair, loaded, disrespectful. Inside the studio, none of that is visible, but the energy feels heavier, like everyone senses the storm forming outside. Sunny glances briefly at the camera, then back to Chris. Do you think, she asks carefully, that fame gives you a louder voice than someone without it? Chris doesn't hesitate. Absolutely. And is that fair? No, he says. But it's real. The audience murmurs again. This time, there's no applause, just thought. That imbalance, Sunny says, is what worries people. Chris nods. It worries me too. Which is why I try to use my voice to amplify others when I can. But giving it up entirely doesn't fix the imbalance. It just removes one voice from the conversation. There's a subtle shift now. The confrontation hasn't disappeared, but it's deepened. Less sharp edges. More weight. Sunny studies him for a long moment. Some fans say they feel talked down to, she says. That celebrities assume moral superiority. Chris's jaw tightens again, just slightly. I don't think I'm better than anyone, he says. I think I'm flawed. I think I'm learning. And I think pretending otherwise would be dishonest. The words hang there. Vulnerable. Unscripted. The audience reacts more warmly now. Applause builds, hesitant at first, then stronger. Even Sunny allows a small nod, acknowledging the response. But she doesn't fully retreat. Do you ever consider stepping back? She asks. Letting others lead. Chris smiles faintly. All the time. And sometimes I do. But stepping back should be a choice, not something demanded because someone doesn't like what you're saying. There it is again. The line. The hosts exchange glances. The producers are watching closely. This is walking a fine line between compelling television and something that spirals out of control. Sunny takes a breath. I don't think anyone here is trying to demand silence. I know, Chris says. And for the first time since the confrontation began, there's warmth in his voice again. But that's how it often feels out there. He gestures vaguely, as if pointing beyond the studio walls. Like the moment you speak, you're told to sit down, shut up, remember your place. Sunny's expression softens just a fraction. That happens to a lot of people, she says quietly. Chris meets her gaze. I know. The audience goes still. That single word carries more than paragraphs ever could. For a moment, they are no longer opponents. Just two people acknowledging something uncomfortable. But television doesn't linger in quiet understanding for long. The conversation moves forward, but the edge remains. The clock ticks. Segments end. Questions wrap up. The show marches toward its conclusion. Chris thanks the hosts. Sunny thanks him back. Their smiles return, but they don't quite reach their eyes. As the credits near, the audience applauds again. Louder now. More conflicted. Chris stands, waves, exchanges polite words off mic. But inside, his thoughts are racing. He knows what this means. He's been in the public eye long enough to recognize the feeling. This moment won't stay here. Backstage, a producer mentions how engaging the segment was. Chris nods, appreciative but distant. Sunny passes by him, their eyes meeting briefly. There's no hostility, just something unresolved. Outside the studio, phones light up. Trending topics begin to form. Commentary videos are recorded within minutes. Headlines are drafted, rewritten, sharpened. Chris Evans pushes back on the view. Sunny Hostin challenges celebrity activism. Fans divided after tense on-air exchange. The narrative is already escaping their control. And as Chris steps into the waiting car, the door closing softly behind him, he feels the familiar weight settle on his chest. The knowledge that what he said, how he said it, and what people think he meant are about to take on lives of their own. This wasn't just an interview. It was a spark. And the fire hasn't even started yet. By the time Chris Evans gets home, the world has already decided the moment matters more than he expected. His phone vibrates before he even sets his keys down. One notification becomes 10. 10 become dozens. Clips from the show are everywhere now, cropped, slowed, captioned, stripped of context and fed into the endless machine of opinion. He drops his jacket on the chair, rubs a hand over his face, and exhales. He knew this would happen. Still, knowing doesn't make it easier. On his screen, the headlines feel louder than the studio ever was. Some call him brave. Others call him arrogant. One post praises him for finally saying what everyone's thinking. Another accuses him of talking over a woman who asked legitimate questions. The same 30 seconds of footage fuels completely opposite reactions. Chris sinks onto the couch, staring at the ceiling. He replays the conversation in his head, not the words themselves, but the moments between them. Sunny's pause. His interruption. The audience's intake of breath. He wonders if he should have phrased something differently. If there was a way to stand his ground without sharpening the divide. Across the city, Sunny Hostin is doing the same thing. She sits at her desk, scrolling through her own phone, jaw tight. Messages pour in, supportive ones, angry ones, some deeply personal. People thanking her for holding him accountable. Others accusing her of ambushing a guest, of being biased, of pushing an agenda. Sunny sets the phone down, presses her fingers to her temple. She's no stranger to backlash. But this feels heavier. Not because of Chris Evans specifically, but because of what the exchange represents. Two public figures. Two ideas of responsibility. And an audience eager to crown a winner. By morning, the story has hardened. Entertainment blogs run side-by-side takes. Commentators pause the footage at exact frames, analyzing body language like forensic evidence. Look at his jaw here. Notice her tone shift. This is the moment everything changed. On one morning show, a panel debates whether Chris overstepped. On another, a guest argues Sunny pushed too far. The conversation becomes less about what was said and more about what people project onto it. Fans divide cleanly down the middle. Some see Chris as a thoughtful citizen pushed into defending himself. Others see a powerful celebrity unwilling to accept criticism. Sunny is hailed as fearless by one group and condemned as confrontational by another. The irony isn't lost on either of them. Chris releases a brief statement through his publicist, carefully worded, calm, measured. He thanks the hosts, says he appreciates dialogue, emphasizes respect. It satisfies no one completely. Some fans call it classy. Others call it damage control. Sunny addresses the moment on a later episode of the show. She doesn't name Chris directly at first, but everyone knows who she means. She speaks about the importance of asking hard questions, about not being intimidated by fame. The audience applauds. Online, the comments explode again. Clips of her remarks are stitched next to Chris's interview, played back-to-back like rounds in a boxing match. Thumbnails use dramatic fonts. Faces frozen mid-expression. Arrows. Circles. Words like exposed and shut down scream from the screen. Neither of them asked for this, but both are now inside it. Chris avoids social media for a day, then two. But the silence gnaws at him. He's always believed in engagement, in listening. Now, every scroll feels like walking through broken glass. He sees fans arguing with each other in his name. He sees people he respects disagree sharply. He sees strangers assign motives he doesn't recognize. Late one night, he opens his notes app and starts typing. Not a post. Just thoughts. Sentences that won't be published. Questions he's asking himself. Did I listen enough? Did I interrupt because I was defensive? Is pushing back always the same as talking over? The answers aren't simple. Sunny, meanwhile, prepares for her next show with extra care. She reviews her questions, her phrasing. She knows critics are watching more closely now, ready to pounce on any misstep. She refuses to soften, but she also reflects. She replays the moment when Chris said, "I know." That word stays with her. The media, of course, doesn't reflect. It accelerates. A late-night host jokes about the Captain America Civil War on daytime TV. The audience laughs. The clip goes viral. Opinion columns appear, framing the exchange as a microcosm of something bigger: celebrity influence, public discourse, power dynamics. Academics weigh in. Influencers monetize reactions. The story grows larger than either of them. Then, a twist. A longer, unedited clip of the interview surfaces online. Not the dramatic 30-second exchange, but several uninterrupted minutes showing the full arc, the respectful beginning, the tension, the moments of agreement. Some viewers pause. Why didn't we see this part? People ask. The tone of the debate shifts slightly. Not dramatically, but enough to notice. A few commentators admit the exchange was more nuanced than headlines suggested. Others double down, arguing the full context changes nothing. Chris watches the clip late at night, alone. He notices how his voice stayed mostly calm. He notices where he cut in. He notices Sunny's expressions, the moments where she listened, where she leaned back, where she pressed forward. He doesn't feel vindicated. He feels human. Sunny watches it too. She notices how often he acknowledged her points. How rarely that made it into viral clips. Neither reaches out to the other. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But something shifts. The outrage cycle begins to tire. New controversies emerge. Attention drifts, as it always does. But the divide doesn't fully close. It lingers, a quiet fault line. Weeks later, Chris is asked about the interview in another setting. The question is softer this time. The tone more reflective. He pauses before answering. I think disagreement is uncomfortable, he says. And discomfort makes good television. But it also makes real conversations possible, if we let them be real. It's not a defense. It's not an apology. It's an observation. Sunny, on her end, addresses the broader issue in a later segment, speaking about how public discourse has become performative, how moments are weaponized instead of understood. Some fans notice the parallel. Others don't. The narrative never fully resolves. Because it wasn't really about who won or lost. It was about what happens when two confident voices refuse to shrink, and an audience, hungry for drama, turns dialogue into division. And somewhere beneath the noise, beneath the takes and counter-takes, the original question still hangs in the air, unanswered. Who gets to speak? And who decides when they've said too much? The fallout continues to ripple, quietly now, but persistently. And the final judgment. That belongs not to the hosts, not to the actor, but to the millions still arguing, scrolling, replaying the moment, deciding what it meant, and what it says about them. Because this story isn't over yet. It's just waiting for its last word. By the time the conversation finally begins to fade from the front pages, it hasn't disappeared. It has settled. Like dust after a storm, it coats everything quietly, waiting to be stirred again. In the studio weeks later, the viewer is another episode, another debate, another tense exchange. But there's a subtle difference. The audience listens a little more closely now. The hosts choose their words with extra care. The memory of that moment, with Chris Evans and Sunny Hostin facing each other across a polished table, still lingers in the air, unspoken but present. Chris feels it too. At a fan event, someone asks him, not aggressively, not accusingly, but genuinely, did that interview change how you see things? The room goes still. Phones lift. This isn't just a question, it's an invitation to reopen the wound. Chris takes a breath. I don't think it changed what I believe, he says slowly. But it reminded me how loud the world can get when people stop listening and start choosing sides. The crowd murmurs. Some nod. Some frown. No one looks bored. Later that night, alone again, Chris scrolls through a final wave of reactions. The comments are calmer now, but deeper. Long paragraphs. Thoughtful disagreements. Fans talking to each other instead of past each other. Not all of them, but enough to notice. He sees people saying things like I didn't agree with him, but I respect how he handled it. Others write, Sunny was tough, but she asked questions that mattered. That wasn't the ending the internet wanted. But maybe it's the one that lasts longer. Sunny, meanwhile, addresses the exchange one final time. Not directly, not defensively, but honestly. She speaks about the responsibility of asking questions without dehumanizing the person across from you. About the balance between holding power accountable and allowing room for complexity. Her voice doesn't shake. But it's softer than before. The audience applauds, not wildly, not angrily, thoughtfully. Media outlets attempt one last push for drama. They run retrospectives. Where are they now? Pieces. Polls asking viewers who they sided with. The results are split almost evenly. Fans remain divided. Some still insist Chris should have stayed in his lane. Others argue that Sunny crossed a line. The comment sections remain battlegrounds, but quieter ones now. Less rage, more fatigue. And in that exhaustion, something unexpected happens. People start talking about the ideas again. About influence. About responsibility. About whether speaking out is a right or a risk. About how quickly conversations become competitions. The moment transforms, not into a victory for one side, but into a reference point. Remember that interview? People say, weeks later, months later. That's when it really showed how broken our conversations are. Chris never returns to The View. Not because he's afraid, but because the story doesn't need a sequel. The silence isn't avoidance. It's punctuation. Sunny continues her work, undeterred. She keeps asking hard questions. She keeps inviting tension into the room, knowing full well the cost. They don't reconcile publicly. They don't feud either. There's no dramatic follow-up, no viral handshake, no apology tour. Just two people who stood their ground and walked away. The audience reaction, in the end, becomes the real aftermath. Viewers argue, reflect, defend, question themselves. Some unsubscribe. Others subscribe just to stay close to the next moment like this. The clip becomes a teaching tool, a warning, a mirror. And somewhere among all those voices, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. This wasn't about Chris Evans. This wasn't about Sunny Hostin. It was about us, watching, judging, choosing sides, deciding what we want conversations to look like. Do we want silence, safe and polite? Or do we want tension, messy and real? That question lingers long after the lights dim, long after the cameras shut off, long after the applause fades. And now, it's your turn. Was Chris Evans right to push back, or did Sunny Hostin ask the questions that needed to be asked? Tell us what you think in the comments. Share your perspective. Read what others are saying, and challenge yourself to listen, even when you disagree. And if you want more cinematic, intense, behind-the-scenes stories where celebrity moments become something much bigger, subscribe to The Narration Show. Like the video, share it with someone who loves real drama with real stakes, and stay with us for the next story that everyone will be talking about.